And the word of the Lord was made to me, and he said, Therefore, thou son of man, take wailing on Tyre, and thou shalt say to Tyre, that dwelleth in the entering of the sea, to the selling of merchandise of peoples, to many isles, the Lord God saith these things, O Tyre, thou saidst, I am of perfect fairness, and I am set in the heart of the sea. They that be in thy coast that builded thee, filled thy fairness. They builded thee with fir trees of Senir, with all works of boards of the sea. They took a cedar of the Lebanon, to make a mast to thee. They hewed oaks of Bashan into thine oars. They made to thee thy seats of rowers of ivory of India, and cabins of the wood of the isles of Italy. Diverse bis, either white silk of Egypt, was woven to thee into a veil, that it should be set in the mast. Jacinth and purple of the isles of Elisha were made thy covering. The dwellers of Sidon and Arvadians were thy rowers. Tyre, thy wise men were made thy governors. The old men of Byblos, and the prudent men thereof, had shipmen of the service of thy diverse array of household. All the ships of the sea, and the shipmen of these, were in the people of thy merchandise. Persians and Ludians and Libyans were in thine host. Thy men warriors hanged in thee a shield and helmet for thine adorning. Sons of Arvadians, with thine host on thy walls and thy compass, but also Gammadims that were in thy towers, hanged their arrow cases on thy walls by compass. They filled thy fairness. Carthaginians, thy merchants, of the multitude of all kind of riches, filled thy fairs with silver and iron, with tin and with lead. Greece and Tubal and Meshech, they were thy merchants, and brought bondmen and brazen vessels to thy people. From the house of Togarmah they brought horses and horsemen and mules to thy chapping. The sons of Dedan were thy merchants. Many isles provided the merchandise of thine hand. They exchanged teeth of ivory and of ebony in thy price. Syria was thy merchant for the multitude of thy works. They set it forth in thy market gems and purple and clothes woven diversely at the manner of shields and bis and silk and coral, either avoird du pois. Judah and the land of Israel were thy merchants in the best wheat, and set it forth in thy fairs balm and honey and oil and resin. Damascus was thy merchant in the multitude of thy works, in the multitude of diverse riches, and fat wine and wools of best color. Dan and Greece and Uzal set it forth in thy fairs, iron made subtly, gum of myrrh and calamus, that is a spice sweet smelling, in thy merchandise. Dedan were thy merchants, in tappets to sit upon. Arabia and all the princes of Kedar, they were the merchants of thine hands. With lambs and wethers and goat kids, thy merchants came to thee. The sellers of Sheba and of Ramah, they were thy merchants, with all the best sweet smelling spices and precious stone and gold, which they set it forth in thy market. Haran and Cana and Eden were thy merchants. Sheba and Ashur and Chilmad were thy sellers. They were thy merchants in many manners, in fardels of jacinth, and of clothes of many colors, and of precious riches that were wrapped and bound with cords. Also ships of the sea had cedars in their merchandises. Thy princes were in thy merchandise, and thou were filled and were glorified greatly in the heart of the sea. Thy rowers brought thee in many waters, but the south wind all brake thee. In the heart of the sea were thy riches and thy treasures and thy manifold instruments. Thy shipmen and thy governors that held thy appurtenance of household, and were sovereigns of thy people, and thy men warriors that were in thee, with all thy multitude which is in the midst of the sea, shall fall down in the heart of the sea, in the day of thy falling. Ships shall be troubled of the sound of the cry of the governors, and all the men that held oar shall go down out of their ships. Shipmen and governors of the sea shall stand in the land, and shall yell on thee with great voice, and they shall cry bitterly, and shall cast powder on their heads, and shall be sprinkled with ashes. And they shall have baldness, and they shall shave baldness on thee, and shall be girded with hair shirts, and they shall beweep thee in bitterness of soul, with most bitter weeping. And they shall take on thee a song of mourning, and they shall bewail thee. Who is as Tyre, that was dumb in the midst of the sea. And thou, Tyre, filledest the needs of many peoples in the going out of thy merchandise of the sea, the multitude of thy riches and of thy peoples. Thou madest rich the kings of earth. Now thou art all broken of the sea, and the depths of waters. Thy riches and thy multitude that was in the midst of thee fell down. All the dwellers of isles and the kings of those were stunning on thee. All they were smitten with tempest, and changed their cheers. The merchants of peoples hissed on thee. Thou art brought to naught, and thou shalt not be till without end.